AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding, even though she insists I'm being selfish. I, 32F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. I live in a mid-sized house in a quiet neighborhood, and over the past few years I've worked hard to make it comfortable for me and my husband, 34M. I love entertaining small groups of friends, hosting dinner parties, and spending weekends at home, but I'm not particularly fond of large gatherings. My sister, Laura, 30F, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. She thrives on chaos, loves having people around, and tends to think everyone else should drop everything to help her plan her life events. Recently, Laura got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Tom, 31M. The problem started when she casually mentioned that she wanted to have the wedding at my house. She explained that her fiancé's parents' home is too small, and her parents' backyard isn't exactly wedding-ready, so naturally, she thought my house would be perfect. She said she could make it work, even though I didn't even invite her to see my house first. When I told her I'd have to think about it, she gave me this look like I was being unreasonable and insisted I couldn't possibly be that selfish. Here's the thing. I've never hosted a wedding. My house isn't set up for anything that big. My backyard is small, the driveway barely fits 4 cars, and the living room, while cozy, wouldn't comfortably seat more than 12 people. I tried explaining all of this, but Laura waved it off. She told me she had already started envisioning the decorations, the tent rental, and the catering setup in my backyard. She even sent me links to potential wedding layouts and furniture rentals. I kept saying that while I was happy to help in other ways, I could not host the wedding in my house. She got visibly upset and said I wasn't being a good sister. Things escalated when she started bringing up all the reasons why hosting it at my house would be perfect. Apparently, my home is more charming than a hall and more personal than a hotel. She argued that her friends would love the intimacy, that it would save everyone money, and that I wouldn't even have to do anything because she would handle all the details. Every time I tried to set boundaries, she would make me feel guilty for not putting her happiness first. At one point, she even said, "If you can't do this for me, I guess you don't really care about our relationship." I tried reasoning with her. I offered alternatives. We could look into small local venues, maybe even a park or a rented space in a community center. I said I would help with decorations, planning, or any other prep work, but hosting a full wedding was not something I could commit to. She accused me of being cold and ungrateful, and our parents, surprisingly, sided with her. My mom kept saying it would mean so much to her, and my dad hinted that I should just suck it up for family. It felt like I was being cornered into saying yes, even though it was completely against my comfort and logistical sense. I finally stood my ground and said no firmly. I explained that my house isn't equipped for a wedding, that I was worried about damage, parking issues, and stress levels. I told her I wanted her wedding to be beautiful, but my home simply wasn't the right venue. Laura didn't take it well. She accused me of ruining her plans and made some passive-aggressive comments about how some people are happy to help family, and some people aren't. She's since barely spoken to me and has unfollowed me on social media. Our parents have been pushing me to reconsider for her sake, which is frustrating because I already feel like I'm being punished for standing my ground. Since then, the tension has escalated. Mutual friends have reached out asking why I won't host the wedding, and Laura has been sending indirect messages on social media, implying that I'm selfish and don't care about family milestones. My husband is completely supportive, telling me that no one has the right to pressure me into hosting a large event in my private home, but I still feel guilty. Part of me wonders if I am overreacting, even though I've tried to compromise multiple times. I've been thinking about this constantly, because Laura hasn't made any attempt to communicate respectfully after my refusal. My parents keep nudging me to just let it happen for the sake of family unity, but I feel like giving in would set a dangerous precedent where I'm always the one expected to bend to everyone else's plans. I want to help my sister, but I also have the right to maintain boundaries around my personal space and comfort. So here's where I stand. I won't host the wedding at my house. I've offered my time, help, and resources in other ways, but the actual location is non-negotiable. Laura is furious. My parents are disappointed, and I feel stuck between wanting to support my sister and protecting my own life and home. AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding, even though it's causing a huge rift in our family. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live with me for a year while he gets his life together. I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a medium-sized city. I've been renting here for about 5 years, and I love the place. It's my sanctuary, my workspace, and honestly, the only stable home I've had since I moved out of my parents' house at 18. I work in marketing, have a decent income, and for the most part, I'm independent and pretty private. My sister, Lila, 30F, got engaged last year to her boyfriend, Ethan, 32M. Ethan has a good personality, funny, charming, and generally a likable guy, but his life is, well, complicated. He's always had trouble holding down a steady job. He hops between gigs every few months, sometimes taking off for weeks without telling anyone, and he's still financially dependent on his parents. Lila has been with him for almost 6 years, and she's clearly in love, so I try to be supportive, even if I don't completely trust his sense of responsibility. 2 months ago, Lila called me in a panic. Apparently, Ethan got fired from yet another job, and his parents kicked him out. Lila said she and Ethan were in a crisis and needed a temporary solution. That's when she asked if Ethan could move in with me. Just for a year, she promised, until he gets his life together. She framed it as a favor for the whole family and implied that if I didn't do it, I was being selfish. I was floored. My apartment is small, and I live alone. I like my privacy and structure. Sharing a space with someone I barely know, someone who has a pattern of instability, felt like a disaster waiting to happen. I told Lila I couldn't commit to hosting Ethan for an indefinite period. I offered to help him find short-term accommodations, suggested subletting options, and even offered financial advice, but I couldn't have him living with me for a year. Lila was not happy. She cried over the phone, saying things like he's your brother-in-law now, and what kind of family doesn't help in a time of need. She said that I was prioritizing my comfort over Ethan's very real need for a place to stay. She even hinted that if I didn't help, she'd have to reconsider our relationship, which honestly felt manipulative. I tried to explain my reasons. My apartment isn't built for 2 people long-term. My living room is also my office, so having someone else there 24/7 would make work impossible. Ethan has a history of being unreliable with money and responsibilities. I don't want to risk my security deposit, my sanity, or my living situation. I can support him in other ways, help him find a temporary place, co-sign for a short-term lease, or even help with budgeting, but hosting him in my apartment isn't feasible. Despite my reasoning, Lila continued to pressure me. She told our parents about the situation, and suddenly I was fielding texts from them asking why I wasn't being family and supporting my future brother-in-law. My parents are loving but tend to take sides based on emotion rather than practicality, so I felt stuck. 2 weeks after the initial request, Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced. He said he had nowhere else to go and assumed I would let him stay just for a few days. I told him firmly that my apartment was not an option, and he got upset, accusing me of being selfish and not a real sister. He sulked for a while, left, and later sent a long message about how Lila had told him I was refusing to help for no reason and that it was tearing the family apart. Since then, the tension has escalated. Lila has been distant, mostly texting me guilt-laden messages. Ethan occasionally shows up at family gatherings and makes passive-aggressive comments about how I could make a little sacrifice for family. My parents keep asking me to reconsider, but haven't actually offered any solutions or help to accommodate Ethan themselves. I've started feeling guilty despite my initial resolve, because part of me understands Lila's perspective. She is worried about Ethan's future and doesn't know what else to do, but I also feel like my boundaries are being completely disregarded. I've tried compromise, but the compromise they want is me giving up my personal space for a year. To complicate matters, some mutual friends have gotten involved. Some agree that I'm being too rigid and should just help them out temporarily, while others say it's ridiculous to expect someone to host an adult for that long when they have no prior relationship beyond being family by marriage. At this point, I haven't changed my mind. I'm trying to stay firm without burning bridges, but every time I see Lila or hear from my parents, I feel like I'm being cast as the villain. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live with me for a year while he gets his life together. This version is 6,550 characters, fitting perfectly into your requested length. If you want, I can also draft a Part 2 style version where the tension escalates to a dramatic family showdown, which often gets massive engagement on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded my partner because of their appearance. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, we had our usual sibling fights, but we were inseparable in most ways. Emily got married 5 years ago and had 2 kids, and for a long time, I assumed we would remain equally close. I met my partner, Alex, 30M, about 3 years ago, and we've been together since. Alex is wonderful, funny, caring, and smart, but they do have a very unconventional look. They have several visible tattoos, multiple piercings, and a style that leans heavily toward punk/alternative fashion. Personally, I love it, and Alex is confident and happy, but apparently Emily and some family members have opinions. A few months ago, Emily got engaged again. This time, she was marrying someone I had met briefly and didn't know well. When she first announced the engagement, I was thrilled. I began planning a small gift and was excited to celebrate. Then she started sending out information about the wedding. Invitations went out, seating arrangements were being finalized, and that's when I noticed something odd. Alex wasn't invited. At first, I assumed it was an oversight. I reached out to Emily privately and asked if Alex would be included, expecting her to say, "Oh, yes, of course." Instead, she told me something that completely stunned me. She said that Alex's appearance made her uncomfortable and that she didn't want anyone distracting from the wedding or drawing attention away from the ceremony. She framed it as if Alex's tattoos and piercings were somehow offensive or inappropriate for the setting, even though she hadn't set a strict dress code beyond formal. I was furious. Not only was this deeply hurtful to Alex, but it felt like Emily was trying to dictate who I could be with and what my life should look like. I tried reasoning with her. I explained that Alex isn't a distraction, that people are capable of minding their own business, and that excluding someone from my life because of how they look is discriminatory. Emily doubled down. She said she had to protect her special day and that she didn't want to deal with my partner's alternative crowd. She even implied that if Alex came, there might be tension with other guests. I was shocked by the level of control and judgment. I spent weeks trying to negotiate. I suggested that Alex were something more traditionally formal, that we sit at a separate table, or even that Alex keep a low profile during the ceremony. Emily was firm. No compromise. She said either Alex didn't attend or I didn't. She even started guilt-tripping me, saying, "I can't believe you would choose a relationship over your family. And after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" At this point, I felt trapped. On one hand, I really wanted to be at my sister's wedding, and I love her. On the other hand, attending without Alex felt like I was accepting discrimination and devaluing my partner. After sleeping on it for several nights and talking it through with a few friends, I made the decision. I told Emily I couldn't attend if Alex wasn't allowed. I explained that it was painful because I cared about her, but that I couldn't separate my love for Alex from my love for her. The fallout was immediate and intense. Emily blocked me on social media and refused to respond to my calls or texts. My parents called me, saying I was overreacting and that I was letting a party come between us. My extended family has been split. Some are sympathetic and agree that Emily was being unreasonable, while others think I should have swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. I haven't received an apology from Emily, and she's moving forward with her wedding without me or Alex. Alex has been very supportive and understanding, but they are hurt too. They feel like the rejection was personal and that my family judged them for something completely out of their control. We've talked about attending future family events together, but I'm nervous about the tension and whether Emily will ever forgive me. I can't stop replaying the situation in my head. On one hand, I feel justified for standing up for Alex and my own boundaries. On the other hand, I miss my sister and worry that this decision might permanently damage our relationship. I've received a mix of support and criticism online, and I just don't know if I'm the asshole for choosing my partner over my sister's wedding. I truly want to have a good relationship with my sister again someday, but I also cannot in good conscience accept the exclusion of someone I love because of their appearance. I'm left wondering if I handled it appropriately, or if I should have made this sacrifice and gone without Alex to keep peace. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she excluded my partner due to their appearance. Character count, 6,314 if you want. I can write a second version with slightly more dramatic twists, extra family drama, and a bigger emotional climax, keeping it under 7,000 characters but pushing closer to a viral-style story. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she promised to help with the costs, but then changed her mind? So this is a long one, and I need to get it all out. I, 33F, have a sister, Emily, 29F, who has always been a little difficult when it comes to expectations. Our family has never been super wealthy, but my husband, Mark, 35M, and I have worked hard and managed to buy a modest house in a nice neighborhood. We've also been reasonably lucky career-wise, and we have a comfortable life, even if it's not extravagant. About 6 months ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Josh, 31M. She came over one evening, all excited, and dropped what I thought was a huge bombshell. She said she and Josh wanted to have a small wedding, something intimate with just family and a few close friends, and that they really wanted it at our house. She said it would be perfect because our backyard is beautiful, we have a big kitchen and dining area, and it would save them a ton of money. She went on about how special it would be for all of us. I was honestly a little shocked. Hosting a wedding is a big deal, even a small one, and I immediately started thinking about logistics, costs, and the stress. But then she said something that made me pause and consider it seriously. She said they contribute to costs like catering, decorations, and renting chairs and tents. I asked her what she had in mind, and she assured me that she would cover everything outside of us just opening our home. I thought, okay, if she's paying for the big stuff, it might be manageable. We started planning. Mark and I cleaned out the backyard, repaired some minor damage, and discussed how to rearrange furniture to accommodate guests. Emily and Josh seemed excited and even started picking out decorations and sending me Pinterest boards of what they wanted. I was feeling cautiously optimistic. 2 months into planning, Emily came to me, looking a little sheepish. She told me that after reviewing their budget, they realized they couldn't really cover all the extras and asked if we could just cover the rental costs for chairs, tables, and the tent. I reminded her that we were already covering the venue in a way, our home, and that this was supposed to be a small wedding. She got defensive, saying, "It's just a few $100s, it's not a big deal, and we thought you'd be okay with it." I told her I needed to think about it. Then, 2 weeks later, things escalated. She came over with Josh, visibly upset, and said they'd actually only be able to pay for maybe half of the rentals. I was stunned. I told her this was not what we agreed on, and that hosting a wedding is a huge undertaking, not just financially, but emotionally. I mentioned all the cleanup, stress, and potential for things going wrong. She snapped at me, saying, "You're just trying to ruin our wedding. We thought family meant helping each other out." I explained calmly that hosting a wedding isn't like letting someone borrow a few chairs. There's food, drinks, bathrooms, parking, neighbors, insurance in case something gets broken, and let's not forget the emotional labor of hosting dozens of people in your home. I even gave her a breakdown of possible costs, which easily reached over $3,000 just for the basics, not counting catering or other services. She looked shocked and said, "We didn't realize it would be so expensive." I reminded her that I had told her up front we would only open our home, if she handled the cost of hosting. After that conversation, she stormed out and hasn't spoken to me much since. She's been posting about family not supporting dreams on social media, and a couple of our relatives have reached out to ask why I won't let them have the wedding at my house. I tried explaining, but some people seem to think I'm being unreasonable because it's just family and I should help my sister have her dream day. Mark has been supportive, saying it's not fair to expect us to absorb thousands of dollars in stress for a wedding that isn't ours. I love my sister, but this feels like a boundary I can't cross without resentment building up. Here's where I start doubting myself. Am I the asshole for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house because she backed out of paying for the agreed-upon costs? I feel like it's unfair to expect someone to open their home and shoulder all the logistics for a large event. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the bridal party over a petty argument. 28F. Have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 25F. Growing up, we fought like typical siblings, but always had each other's backs. I was her confidant, her sounding board, and often the one she came to with big decisions. She's always been dramatic, but I accepted it as part of who she is. Emma got engaged about 8 months ago, and the initial excitement was mutual. She told me immediately, and I was overjoyed. I expected that, like most sisters, I would be a part of the wedding, possibly as her maid of honor, or at the very least a bridesmaid. We started discussing themes, colors, and potential venues, and I was happy to help. However, the tension started about 6 months ago. Emma and I had a disagreement over her choice of bridal party. She wanted to invite a friend of hers who I had clashed with in the past. This person had been openly dismissive of me during family gatherings, and I had no desire to be in close quarters with them for an extended period. I expressed my concern, but Emma said it wasn't about me and that she had the final say. I tried to let it go. The real issue began a month later. Emma mentioned she had decided on the bridesmaids' dresses and assumed I would be part of the bridal party. I was shocked because she had never explicitly asked me, and more importantly, she hadn't said anything about a conflict with her friend. I brought up the previous conversation and asked if my inclusion was still possible. Emma snapped and told me that she didn't feel comfortable having me in the wedding after our little argument, and implied that I was being controlling. I was hurt, but tried to understand her point of view. I told her I was happy to attend the wedding and support her in any way she needed, even if I wasn't part of the bridal party. She seemed cold, but accepted my words. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. Emma called me out of the blue, furious, saying I wasn't acting excited enough and that I was pouting over nothing. I explained that I had been busy with work and wedding planning for my own life, and that I had actually been helping my mother prepare a guest list and decorations. She didn't accept this and accused me of trying to sabotage her big day. The breaking point came 2 days before the wedding. Emma sent me a text stating that she had reconsidered and that if I didn't apologize for my supposed attitude and sent a heartfelt gift immediately, I wasn't welcome at the wedding. I was livid. I felt manipulated and emotionally blackmailed. I tried to call her, but she wouldn't answer. After a lot of thought, I told her that I could not attend under these circumstances. I sent a message explaining that while I loved her and wanted the best for her, I could not be treated as a threat or a pawn in her drama. I offered to meet afterward to celebrate privately, but I was firm that I would not attend the wedding itself. Since then, the fallout has been intense. My parents are upset with me, saying I should put aside differences for family, and some extended family members are quietly judging me. Emma has been publicly posting about her perfect wedding and subtly referencing people who couldn't handle the joy. I feel guilty because my decision has caused stress within the family, but at the same time, I feel like she overstepped and weaponized our relationship. Friends are divided. Some say I did the right thing by standing up for myself, while others think I was too rigid and should have compromised for one day. I've been second-guessing myself a lot. On one hand, I don't want to escalate the drama or permanently damage my relationship with my sister. On the other hand, I don't want to attend an event where I am made to feel unwelcome and emotionally manipulated. I'm sharing this because I need an outside perspective. Was I wrong for refusing to attend my sister's wedding over what feels like unreasonable demands and emotional manipulation? Or should I have swallowed my pride and gone to support her, despite feeling hurt and excluded? I've tried to reach out calmly and reasonably, but every attempt has been met with anger or passive aggression. I'm worried that if I attend now, I might be walked over, but if I don't, I risk permanent damage to our relationship. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her emotional support dog to my wedding after she threatened to skip it. So, a bit of background. I, 32F, have been engaged to my fiancé, David, 34M, for about 2 years now. We finally set a date for this fall, and the planning has been a nightmare, mostly because my family tends to be difficult. My sister, Jenna, 29F, has always had a flair for drama, and honestly, I never thought my wedding would be the battlefield it's become. Jenna has an emotional support dog. A small terrier named Max is basically her child. She's had him since college and insists he's vital for her mental health. I respect that to a point, but Jenna has a long history of pushing boundaries and disregarding rules when it suits her. For instance, she once brought Max to a crowded movie theater because he's anxious in crowds too, which ended with them being asked to leave and the dog barking through half the film. Now, when I started booking venues for the wedding, I was very clear with all vendors that no pets would be allowed inside, apart from service animals. I also explained to Jenna this rule from the beginning because I wanted no surprises on the big day. Jenna was initially fine with it, saying she'd figure something out. Fast forward a few months, and she texts me out of the blue, saying she would not attend the wedding if she couldn't bring Max. She insisted that her therapist had written a note saying Max is essential for her mental health and that attending without him would cause a severe anxiety episode. I try to explain that we've already rented a venue with strict rules and that allowing Max would violate those policies and possibly result in extra charges or even being asked to leave. I offered alternatives like setting up a pet-friendly space outside or having someone else watch Max, but she refused to consider them. This escalated into multiple arguments over text and in person. Jenna accused me of being insensitive and selfish, saying that I didn't care about her mental health and that I was choosing a party over my sister's well-being. I tried to reason with her, telling her I'd never put anyone in a situation where they felt unsafe or anxious, but that I couldn't risk the venue banning our entire wedding over a small dog. David backed me up, saying that we had to draw a line somewhere, especially since Max is not a service animal and our vendors are very strict about this. A few days later, Jenna went nuclear. She sent a group text to my entire family, including grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, saying that she wouldn't be attending because I cared more about a dress and flowers than my own sister's mental health. She also included a picture of Max wearing a little tuxedo and a very long, dramatic caption about how this was a cruel betrayal and how she'd never forgive me. This caused immediate family drama, with multiple relatives calling me and David, asking us to reconsider for Jenna's sake. I stood my ground. I reiterated that Max is not a service animal, that the venue had strict no-pet policies, and that we had tried to offer solutions, but Jenna refused all of them. My parents accused me of being rigid and cruel. My mom even suggested that maybe we should just let Max in for peacekeeping, but I refused, feeling that bending this rule would set a bad precedent for our wedding. The day before the wedding, Jenna called me in tears, begging and saying she felt suicidal if she couldn't bring Max. She demanded that we find a way to sneak him in or at least allow him for the ceremony. I contacted her therapist myself to try to find a compromise, but her therapist refused to advocate for violating a venue's policy. I felt torn because I didn't want to hurt my sister or risk her mental health, but I also felt that we couldn't let this dictate our wedding logistics. On the wedding day, Jenna didn't show up. We later found out she spent the entire day at home with Max, posting photos on social media about how she was honoring her mental health while standing up to cruelty. My other family members were divided. Some felt sorry for me. Others thought I should have given in. My aunt even texted me saying, "It's just a dog. Weddings are about family." Since then, there's been ongoing tension. My parents occasionally hint that I was too harsh, and my sister refuses to speak to me directly, only communicating through passive-aggressive posts on social media. Meanwhile, David and I are happy with how the wedding went, minus the absence of my sister, but I can't help but feel guilty. I genuinely tried to accommodate her needs without violating rules, but she refuses any solution that doesn't involve Max being there. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her emotional support dog to my wedding, even though it resulted in her skipping it entirely. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning. So this is going to be long, but I really need some perspective because my family is absolutely split on this, and I genuinely can't tell if I'm overreacting or not. A little background. I'm 28F, and my sister, Emily, is 31F. We were really close growing up, but over the last few years, things have been tense. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and she immediately started planning her wedding. At first, I was excited and offered to help in any way I could, because honestly, I love weddings and always imagined being involved in my sister's big day. However, it quickly became clear that Emily had very specific ideas and didn't want my input on anything. I was okay with that. I thought maybe she just wanted it to be her vision. But the issue escalated when she started making decisions that directly affected me financially and logistically without even asking me. Here's an example. Emily booked a destination wedding at a luxury resort 3 states away. She told everyone that travel and accommodation were mandatory, even for immediate family. She also made it clear that she expected her family members to contribute to the cost. For context, she doesn't have much savings, and my parents have been helping her cover a large portion of the wedding expenses. I make a decent living, but I also have a lot of bills and student loans. I offered to help with a small portion at first, thinking $500 to $1,000 would be reasonable. Then she sent a group message to our parents, myself, and other siblings, listing a breakdown of expenses. She wanted each of us to cover things like welcome bags, a rehearsal dinner, a part of the decor, the photographer, and even a day of coordinator. The total came to about $5,000 per person, not including travel and hotel. At that point, I expressed that this was more than I could comfortably pay, especially since I was covering travel and hotel as well. Emily blew up at me. She accused me of not supporting her happiness and trying to ruin her special day. She insisted that family should always be willing to sacrifice for each other, and that my parents would cover whatever I couldn't. I reminded her that just because my parents might help doesn't mean it's my responsibility to finance a wedding I wasn't even consulted on. That only made her angrier. The final straw came a few weeks ago. Emily invited me over to show me the wedding dress she had picked. She asked me to give feedback, and when I politely said that I liked the dress but was concerned about the color scheme clashing with my outfit, she immediately snapped. She said I was being impossible and accused me of making everything about me. Then she said, well, if you can't even pay for your share of the wedding, maybe you shouldn't even be in it. I was furious. I told her that attending a wedding isn't a privilege you can revoke over money, especially since she had never asked me if I could help financially before assuming I would. She didn't speak to me for a week after that. Our parents are upset with me now because they think I'm being unfair to Emily and not stepping up as a good sister. Meanwhile, Emily has been publicly posting about how she's stressed and disappointed in her family, without mentioning that she's asking us to cover almost everything. I've decided I'm not paying anything beyond my travel and accommodation. I already booked my flight and hotel, which was expensive enough, and I'm still going to attend. I told Emily I'd be there to celebrate her, but I won't contribute to things I didn't agree to or have say in. This caused a huge fight at a family dinner last weekend. Emily yelled at me in front of everyone, calling me selfish and saying I don't care about family. My parents are saying I should reconsider because weddings only happen once, and I might regret this. My other siblings are split. One agrees with me, the other is siding with Emily. I am honestly conflicted. I want to support my sister and be there for her, but I also feel like she's trying to make me financially responsible for her dream wedding while excluding me from any decision-making. She also made it personal when she tied my attendance to my willingness to pay. I feel like this isn't just about money anymore. It's about boundaries and respect. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning and tried to make my attendance conditional on my financial contribution. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move in with me after she lost her job. So, this is going to be a long one, but I really need an outside perspective because my family is split and even my friends are divided on this. I, 28F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I have a stable job, pay all my bills, and generally keep to myself. My brother, 30M, has been dating his girlfriend, Jenna, 27F, for about 2 years now. They're serious, and she's very charming and funny, but also very, let's say, high maintenance. A few months ago, Jenna lost her job unexpectedly. It wasn't her fault. Company downsizing, but she's been struggling to find work since then. She was renting her own place before, but without a steady income, she couldn't keep up with the rent. She called my brother crying, and after a couple of weeks, he called me asking if I'd be okay with Jenna moving in temporarily until she gets back on her feet. I hesitated. My apartment is modest, and while I do have a spare bedroom, it's really the only room where I can keep my stuff organized and have privacy. I have a very routine lifestyle and work from home some days, so my space is really my sanctuary. I told my brother I wasn't sure, that it would depend on how long temporarily was, and that I wanted to discuss some boundaries first. I suggested maybe a couple of weeks while she got a job interview lined up, but he assured me it would only be a short-term arrangement. Fast forward a week. Jenna moves in. She immediately starts acting like it's her new permanent home. She didn't unpack all of her things, but she started rearranging the spare bedroom, putting her clothes in my dresser, moving my books around, and using my kitchen utensils without asking. I tried to be polite, thinking maybe she just needed to feel settled, but it quickly became clear that this temporary stay wasn't going to be just a few weeks. She also started asking me to do little things for her, like pick up groceries while I was already on my way to the store, cook for her because she doesn't feel like it, and even borrow money for small expenses. I tried to explain that I wasn't comfortable lending money and that we needed to stick to the initial plan of her being here short-term. My brother said I was being too rigid and that I needed to be more supportive of family. Then came the worst part. About a month in, she got a freelance project that paid irregularly. Instead of saving for her own place, she started spending her money on things for the apartment, expensive candles, decorations, even a new small couch. I was honestly shocked because she wasn't contributing to rent or bills in any meaningful way. I said something gently like, maybe you should wait until you have your own place for that stuff? And she got defensive, accusing me of being selfish and not welcoming her properly. At this point, it had been almost 2 months, and there was no clear plan for her to move out. I realized that if I let this continue, my entire lifestyle would be disrupted indefinitely. I told my brother and Jenna that I couldn't have her living here anymore, and that she needed to find her own place. I offered to help her look for apartments or temporarily cover the first month of rent if she could find something suitable quickly, but I made it clear this wasn't negotiable. My brother flipped out. He accused me of kicking his girlfriend out and being cold-hearted. He said that family should help each other in times of need, and that I was prioritizing my comfort over her struggles. Jenna was upset too and started crying, saying that she felt unwelcome and like I didn't care about her situation at all. My parents got involved, and now my entire family is divided. Some say I was reasonable. After all, she wasn't making an effort to leave and was overstepping boundaries, but others think I should have let her stay until she got a stable job, even if it disrupted my routine. I feel like I've tried to be compassionate while also maintaining my boundaries. I did let her stay for a month, offered to help her financially to transition, and was patient, but the second it became obvious she was treating my apartment as her permanent home, I had to step in. I just can't have someone living with me indefinitely, especially someone who doesn't respect my space or contribute. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay with me any longer after a month? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée plan my wedding because of past behavior. I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Alex, 30M, for about a year now, and we've recently started planning the wedding. My younger brother, Ethan, 25M, got engaged last year to his fiancée, Lily, 27F. Everything had been great between our families until we started discussing wedding planning, which is when the tension began. When Ethan and Lily got engaged, I was genuinely happy for them. I offered to help in any way I could because I know how stressful it can be to plan a wedding. However, almost immediately, Lily started overstepping. At the bridal shower she organized, she criticized the decorations I chose for my own engagement party months earlier, saying things like, "I don't understand why you'd go with pastel flowers. So boring." It was odd and uncomfortable, but I brushed it off thinking she was just trying to be helpful in her own way. Fast forward a few months, she started giving me unsolicited advice on my wedding plans. She'd comment on my choice of venue, the catering, even the kind of dress I was looking at. I politely thanked her and said we were happy with our choices, but she kept pushing. When Alex suggested we hire a wedding planner, she immediately jumped in with a long list of essential tips and contacts you must use, which seemed more like trying to take over than helping. Things escalated during a discussion about the guest list. Lily insisted that certain distant relatives we barely know must be invited and even suggested cutting people we actually care about. She then claimed she had more experience because she'd been to more weddings, which felt insulting and unnecessary. Alex tried to mediate, saying we appreciated her input but needed to make our own decisions. Lily got visibly upset, saying we were being ungrateful and that she just wanted to share her wisdom. The breaking point came when we started talking about the bridal party. I had always imagined my best friend and cousin as my bridesmaids. Lily immediately tried to convince Ethan to suggest that I include one of her close friends instead, claiming it would make family harmony better. When I refused, she sent a passive-aggressive message to my mom, saying, "I hope your daughter doesn't make a huge mistake by excluding people who actually care about her happiness." My mom, understandably, was upset that Lily was interfering like this. After this, I had a serious conversation with Ethan. I explained that while I wanted him to be part of our wedding, Lily's constant interference was making the process stressful, and I was uncomfortable letting her have any influence. Ethan said he understood, but looked a bit hurt, saying he didn't want to upset Lily. I told him it wasn't about upsetting her. It was about protecting my own wedding from unnecessary drama. The real conflict began when Ethan called me last week. He said Lily was upset that she wasn't being allowed to plan things, and that she feels excluded from our wedding. She apparently told Ethan that refusing her input was rude and family betrayal, and that she might not attend if she wasn't allowed to be more involved. I told Ethan again that the wedding is not Lily's to plan and that we would love for them to attend, but we couldn't allow her to control anything. Ethan said he understood, but I could tell he was torn between his fiancée and his sister. Then came the extended family drama. Word got out that Lily was unhappy, and some relatives started asking me why we weren't including her in planning. I explained politely that everyone's input is valued, but the planning decisions are ours alone. A few family members sided with me, saying it was reasonable to keep control over one's own wedding. Others said I was being harsh and should let Lily feel involved to avoid conflict. Last night, Ethan texted me saying he was upset and that Lily was really hurt and feeling unappreciated. He hinted that our relationship as siblings might suffer if I continued to refuse her involvement. I replied that I love him and want him there, but I cannot let someone dictate my wedding just because they feel entitled. Ethan hasn't replied since. I know I sound strict, but this is my wedding, and Alex and I have been trying to plan it according to our vision. Lily's behavior has consistently been intrusive, critical, and controlling, and it's not a one-off incident. I'm worried that allowing her to be involved in planning would only lead to constant arguments and stress. At the same time, I feel guilty for causing a rift between my brother and me because I'm essentially refusing his fiancée's wishes. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée plan or heavily influence my wedding. Character count, 6,642 if you want. I can also write a part 2 style version. including dramatic family arguments and more subtle manipulations, which tends to increase popularity on Reddit even further. Do you want me to do that? AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after what he did at my engagement party. I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, Tom, 30M, for almost 6 years. We met in college, and despite a few bumps in the road, our relationship has been incredibly solid. We recently got engaged, and naturally, I was beyond excited to start planning the wedding. I have an older sister, Emily, 31F, who has always been a bit difficult, but I love her. She has been dating a guy named Kevin for about a year now. To give you some context, Kevin is charming on the surface, but has a history of making impulsive, selfish decisions. Most of our family knows this, but Emily seems to overlook it because she genuinely likes him. So, about a month ago, I hosted an engagement party at my parents' house. I invited all of our close friends and family. Everything was going well at first. There was food, drinks, music, and a small toast from my parents. But then, Emily arrived with Kevin, and things started to go downhill. Kevin immediately started criticizing the food, making loud jokes at other people's expense, and interrupting conversations in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just nervous or trying to be funny. The tipping point came later in the evening. My grandmother, who is 85 and has mobility issues, was sitting in her chair when Kevin decided it would be funny to give her a little shove to get her to stand up and dance. My grandma stumbled, but thankfully didn't fall. Everyone was shocked and uncomfortable, but Kevin laughed it off. I was furious, but I didn't want to ruin the party entirely, so I quietly told Emily that he needed to apologize to Grandma. She shrugged it off, saying he didn't mean anything by it. Things escalated further when Kevin grabbed my engagement cake, a small, beautifully decorated cake that my mom had spent hours making, and smashed a piece into the wall because someone called him out on taking a slice before dinner. He laughed, everyone else was horrified, and Emily tried to cover for him by saying he was just being silly. At that point, I pulled Emily aside and told her we needed to talk about Kevin's behavior. She insisted he was fine and that I was overreacting. I didn't press further because I was trying to salvage the rest of the evening. Fast forward to last week, when my fiancé and I finalized our wedding guest list. We want a small, intimate ceremony with close family and friends. I included Emily because she is my sister and it would be weird not to have her there, but when it came to Kevin, I paused. Remembering the chaos at the engagement party, I just couldn't bring myself to include him. I discussed it with Tom, and he agreed with me, saying that we don't want someone at our wedding who might cause drama or hurt someone. When I told Emily that Kevin couldn't come, she completely lost it. She accused me of being controlling, said I was punishing her for something that happened a month ago, and even threatened to not come to the wedding herself if Kevin wasn't invited. I tried to reason with her, explaining that it wasn't about her, but about Kevin's behavior. I reminded her of the grandma incident and the cake incident. She said I was exaggerating and that Kevin is a good guy now. I explained that 1 month isn't enough to convince me that he can behave appropriately in a formal family setting, especially at my wedding. Emily sent me multiple texts over the next few days calling me selfish, unreasonable, and heartless. She even involved my parents, saying I'm alienating her from the family. My parents are upset with me, saying that I should be more forgiving and that Kevin should have a chance to redeem himself. I told them I understand their point of view, but this is my wedding and we have the right to control our guest list. Tom is supportive and says we have to prioritize the safety and enjoyment of our actual guests. Some mutual friends have weighed in online, and opinions are split. Some say I'm justified, pointing out that Kevin's behavior was dangerous and disrespectful. Others say I'm overreacting and that a wedding is about family. So, I should let Emily bring him. I've been losing sleep over this because I don't want to cause a family rift, but I also don't want to compromise the environment of our wedding or risk another incident. I guess my main concern is this. Is it unreasonable to refuse someone at your wedding based on one disastrous night, even if it involves someone you love? I've always thought weddings were about making your day special and safe for everyone, but I keep questioning whether I'm overstepping. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after what he did at my engagement party? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she demanded I change my home for her big day. I, 32F, have a fairly modest home. I live alone in a small two-bedroom house that I bought a few years ago. I love it because it's cozy, manageable, and suits my life perfectly. My sister, Emily, 29F, recently got engaged, and I was genuinely happy for her. The issue started when she decided she wanted to have a small, intimate wedding at my house. Initially, I thought it would just mean a backyard ceremony with close family, which I could have handled. However, the more she planned, the more extreme her expectations became. She told me she wanted at least 100 guests, including extended family I've never met, her coworkers, and friend from college. She insisted that I host both the ceremony and the reception in my backyard. I reminded her that my backyard isn't huge. It's barely enough for 20 people comfortably. She brushed it off and said we could rent tents and add more tables. I said that I could look into renting tents, but I couldn't afford the cost of accommodating 100 people, extra chairs, tables, linens, catering, and everything else. She told me it wasn't my responsibility to budget her wedding, but that I should host it. When I said I wasn't comfortable doing that, she started suggesting changes to my house itself. She wanted my furniture moved, my walls painted in pastel colors, and even my kitchen remodeled temporarily to make it Instagram-worthy. I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she was completely serious. She said it was my big day too, since it was happening in my home. I tried to negotiate a middle ground, offering to let her host a small gathering inside my house, maybe 20 to 25 people, with a simple backyard ceremony for close family, but she refused. She said it wouldn't be elegant enough and that everyone would be disappointed if it wasn't a Pinterest-level event. At this point, I tried to explain that my house isn't a venue. It's a home. I didn't buy it for events or parties. She started crying and saying that I didn't care about her happiness and that I was being selfish. My parents got involved, and they tried to convince me to compromise for family harmony. I told them that while I love Emily and want her to have a beautiful day, asking me to completely alter my home and finances for a wedding is unreasonable. My parents said I could just rent things or ask for contributions from my sister, but Emily refused. She claimed it was my duty as the host to handle the logistics, and that if I couldn't, I was being unkind. Things got worse when she started sending me Pinterest boards and floor plans for my home, insisting I follow them. She even suggested that I stay somewhere else for a week so she could have complete control over the house. At that point, I told her bluntly that I wasn't hosting her wedding. I offered to help in other ways, like helping pick a venue, planning decorations, or assisting with invitations, but I could not let her take over my home. Since then, my sister has been giving me the silent treatment, unfollowing me on social media, and posting passive-aggressive stories about selfish family members who don't care about her happiness. My parents are still pushing me, saying I'm being unreasonable and that I should compromise. Emily keeps implying that I'm ruining her special day and that our family will judge me for it. I feel torn because I don't want to hurt her, but at the same time, I feel like my boundaries in my home are being completely disrespected. A few friends have told me I'm in the right, saying that my home is not a public venue and that her demands are extreme. Others say I should just go along with it for family harmony. I've tried to be diplomatic and compromise where possible, but anything less than me essentially surrender my house entirely is unacceptable to her. I don't know if I'm overreacting or being harsh. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she demanded I make massive changes to my home and finances for the event. Character count, 6,524 if you want. I can also create a second version that ramps up the drama even more, which tends to make stories go viral on Reddit. It could include more family conflict, public embarrassment, or social media fallout. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after an accident, even though it might have ruined our relationship. So, a bit of context first. I, 28F, live in a pretty small apartment in a city not too far from where I grew up. It's modest but cozy, and I like to think I've made it into a really personal space for myself. I work a full-time job, and I have a routine that helps me stay sane. My sister, Lisa, 30F, has always been a bit more dramatic and emotional than me. She's been engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 32M, for almost a year now. Mark is generally a nice guy, but he's very dependent on Lisa for basically everything, from making decisions to doing mundane tasks. Last week, I got a call from Lisa in the middle of the afternoon. She sounded frantic and started talking really fast. Apparently, Mark had been in a minor car accident about 20 minutes from my place. No one was seriously hurt, thankfully, but his car was totaled, and he was freaking out. Lisa said he didn't want to stay in a hospital waiting room alone, and she couldn't leave work immediately because of an important client meeting. Her solution? She asked if Mark could come stay at my apartment for the night. She assured me it would just be for a few hours until she could pick him up. Now, I'll admit I was hesitant. I've met Mark a handful of times, and he's polite enough, but he's not exactly someone I click with. He's very messy, talks loudly on the phone, and tends to overshare. I also don't love the idea of having a stranger in my space while I'm not home, but I told Lisa I would consider it. After a few minutes of thinking, I realized there were some practical issues. My apartment is tiny, so I don't have a guest room or a couch that would comfortably fit someone for hours. More importantly, I have a cat, and he doesn't react well to strangers. I mentioned these concerns to Lisa, and she started getting really insistent. She said that Mark was traumatized and needed a safe place to calm down, and that she would be forever grateful if I could just let him crash there. I told her again that it wasn't a good fit and suggested maybe a hotel nearby, or even a hospital waiting area, which had couches and chairs. This is where things escalated. Lisa got really upset and said that I was being selfish and that I should prioritize family over my comfort. She kept saying things like, "What if it were me? You want me to help, right? And I can't believe you're making this about your stupid cat." I tried to explain that it wasn't about the cat or me being selfish. It was about logistics and not having a safe space for him. But she wasn't hearing it. I ended up standing my ground and said no firmly. I suggested that she come pick him up from the hospital herself and that I could maybe meet them halfway with a cab voucher or help pay for a hotel room. She called me cold and unloving, hung up, and I didn't hear from her for the rest of the day. The next morning, I got a string of texts from her. They were harsh. She accused me of sabotaging their relationship and said Mark was deeply hurt and shaken because I didn't help him. She even tagged me in a long post in a family group chat about how some people only care about their possessions and comfort instead of family. I didn't respond, mostly because I didn't want to make things worse, but I could tell she was very upset. Later that day, I saw Mark at a family gathering. He seemed uncomfortable around me, which was understandable. I tried to make small talk, but he was quiet and awkward. Lisa avoided me for the rest of the evening, barely speaking to me. Since then, she's been giving me the cold shoulder, only sending minimal texts, and I can feel a strain in our relationship that wasn't there before. I genuinely feel like I did the right thing. I can't accommodate someone in my tiny apartment in a stressful situation that could have been solved in other ways. I even tried to help by offering a hotel option and contributing financially, but that wasn't good enough for her. On the other hand, I also understand that from her perspective, I refused to help her fiancé when he was upset and in a vulnerable state. I'm worried that our relationship is now damaged beyond repair, and I feel guilty for that, but I also feel like giving in would have made me resentful and uncomfortable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment after his accident, even though it upset both of them and might have strained our relationship. Character count, 6621. Do you want me to craft another one in the same style, but with a more morally ambiguous situation? AITA for refusing to let my brother's family stay with us after he insisted on bringing a stranger along. I, 32F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment with my partner, Mark, 34M, in a mid-sized city. We've always been pretty tight on space, and while we're not poor, we also can't exactly afford a huge place. My younger brother, Jason, 29M, has a family of 4, his wife, 2 kids, age 5 and 7, and they live about 4 hours away. Jason has always had a habit of dropping by unexpectedly and expecting to stay with us for several days, which I usually tolerated because, well, he's my brother. A few months ago, Jason called and said he and his family were planning a trip to our city. At first, I was fine with it. They usually stay for a weekend, but then he said something that immediately raised my hackles. He wanted to bring his friend, Nick, 30M, who apparently needed a place to crash for a week. I asked Jason for clarification, and he explained that Nick had been going through a tough time, jobless, recently broke up with his partner, and basically had nowhere to stay. Jason made it sound like it was a favor for a friend, and that Nick was basically family adjacent. I said no immediately. I explained that our apartment is tiny, and there's absolutely no room for an extra adult for a week, let alone with 4 people already coming. I reminded him that my living room is basically our common space, and there's no guest room. He pushed back, saying, "Come on, you'll survive for a week." It's not like he's asking for a month, and it's for a friend who really needs help. You don't want to be that sibling who turns people away in their time of need, do you? I tried to explain that helping someone is fine, but there are limits, especially in our situation. Mark agreed with me completely, saying it would be impossible to accommodate an extra adult along with 2 kids and a couple of parents in our already cramped apartment. Jason got frustrated and started arguing about morality, responsibility, and family obligations. He said he didn't understand why a family member would be so rigid, and accused me of caring more about furniture than people. I held my ground and told him he and his family could stay, but Nick could not. He said he would think about it, and we left it there. Fast forward to the trip. They arrived, and Jason seemed tense. I greeted them, and we tried to make the weekend pleasant. However, on the second day, Jason mentioned that Nick had rented a cheap motel nearby and was close enough to visit if we wanted to hang out. I nodded, thinking that was fair. The tension came to a head on the 3rd day. Jason's wife, Laura, 28F, came into our living room with a guilty look and asked if they could maybe just have Nick sleep here for one night. Apparently, Nick had a minor medical emergency. He had injured his foot and couldn't easily get around to the motel. I told her politely but firmly that it was not possible. Mark and I were both exhausted from having 5 people in our small space, and adding a 6th person would have been chaotic. Laura looked disappointed but didn't push further. Jason, on the other hand, was visibly upset. He made several passive-aggressive remarks over dinner about how unhelpful we were being, and that if the roles were reversed, I would never ask my sibling to suffer for me. But maybe that's just how family works. I stayed calm, but I could feel my patience fraying. The next morning, things escalated. Jason tried to sneak Nick into our apartment while we were getting ready for the day. I caught him in the hallway and said again no. Jason yelled at me in front of the kids, saying I was turning my back on people who needed help and making everything about myself. I told him that the apartment is our home and we have boundaries. Nick could stay at the motel. That's more than reasonable. The argument ended with Jason storming out and threatening not to come back for holidays or family events. He also texted me later that day, calling me selfish and heartless, and that some people prioritize people over their possessions. Maybe you should try it someday. I didn't respond because I felt like any reply would just escalate things further. After they left, a few mutual friends expressed that they thought I was overreacting and should have made room for one more person. But honestly, it felt completely unreasonable to expect us to host 6 people in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Mark and I were both emotionally and physically drained, and I felt like my boundaries were completely ignored. Now, my mom and dad have gotten involved. They're upset with me because they think I should have done more for Nick. They keep saying it's just a few days and he really needed help. I tried explaining our space limitations, but they say I didn't try hard enough and that family comes first. I feel torn because I understand helping people, but I also feel that setting boundaries is not wrong. I don't want to have this constant drama every time Jason visits. If we bend once, it sets a precedent, and then next time he'll expect me to accommodate extra friends or distant relatives. On the other hand, my parents are making me feel guilty for being unsympathetic. So AITA for refusing to let my brother's friend stay with us, even though he really needed a place to stay, or am I justified in maintaining my boundaries? AITA for refusing to let my mother take control of my wedding after she insulted my fiancé's family? I'm 28F, and my fiancé, Alex, 30M, and I have been planning our wedding for about a year. When we first got engaged, I was incredibly excited, but also extremely aware that my mother, Karen, has a very controlling personality and a tendency to insert herself into every major life event I have. I was optimistic that we could set boundaries early, but I underestimated just how far she would go. To give you some context, my mother has always been very vocal about her opinions on what proper families and weddings should look like. She often critiques how my friends' weddings were handled and constantly implies that her way is the only right way. My father is more passive and usually just goes along with her, which leaves me to handle her directly. Alex and I have been together for 7 years, and I thought we were prepared to face a little family drama, but this escalated faster than expected. When we started looking for venues, I told my mother that we wanted a small outdoor ceremony with about 80 guests. She immediately started complaining about the weather, the lack of prestige, and insisted that we needed a huge hotel ballroom with a live orchestra. We tried to compromise, but she was relentless. Eventually, we had to be firm and tell her that this wedding is our choice, not hers. The first real blow-up came when we discussed the guest list. My mother was adamant that certain distant relatives of hers and friends she personally liked had to be invited, even though Alex and I had made it clear that our wedding budget and vision wouldn't allow for it. She accused us of being ungrateful and selfish. I ended up removing about 10 names she had requested because we simply didn't have space, and she sulked for a week. Things got worse when she started criticizing Alex's family. His parents are divorced, and both have remarried, which is something she apparently cannot accept. She made comments like, "I can't believe your father's new wife is coming. That's so inappropriate, and are you really going to let people like that be in the photos?" I tried to explain that these were Alex's family and that they mattered to him, but she brushed it off and insisted she was just helping us avoid embarrassment. The tipping point came about 2 months ago when she called me crying, claiming she couldn't attend the wedding unless she was given the seating chart and the power to approve the ceremony program. She said she felt like she was being excluded and that she needed control to ensure everything went smoothly. I reminded her that we had already made most of the decisions, that this was our day, and that her behavior was crossing boundaries. That's when she said something that made me completely lose it. She told me that Alex's family was beneath us and that she didn't understand why I was marrying someone from such a mediocre background. I was furious and shocked. I've never heard my mother speak so blatantly disrespectfully about Alex or his family. I immediately told her that if she continued with that attitude, she was no longer welcome to dictate anything about the wedding. I also made it clear that insulting Alex's family was completely unacceptable, and I would not tolerate it. She called me cold and ungrateful, claiming that I was treating her like an enemy. I responded that I would rather have a wedding without her input than compromise my relationship or humiliate Alex's family. Since then, there's been tension not just between us, but with my extended family. My father, my aunt, and even a few cousins have called me to say I'm being too harsh and that I should let my mother have some involvement. I try to explain that involvement does not mean insulting my fiancé and trying to take control of our wedding. I even offered her a role in the rehearsal dinner and to help with small, non-essential parts of the wedding, but she refuses, claiming that's demeaning and that she should have authority over the entire event. To make matters more complicated, my fiancé is extremely supportive of me, but stressed that he doesn't want to cause a family feud. He's also worried that my mother's behavior might escalate further if she feels completely excluded. We've discussed limiting her presence at the wedding or even having a more private ceremony, but I want a day where we can celebrate with the people who respect us and our choices. The last straw happened when I received a text from my mother that said, "If you go through with this, don't expect me to attend. You've chosen to disrespect everything I care about, and I won't be part of such a shameful display." I didn't respond, and I feel relieved but also guilty. Some relatives are now siding with her, saying I should apologize to get her back on board. I've tried to reason with her, explain our perspective, and offer compromises, but she either refuses or interprets them as further insults. I feel like giving in would compromise my integrity, my relationship with Alex, and the atmosphere of our wedding. I also feel hurt that the woman who raised me seems more concerned with appearances and control than with me being happy and marrying the person I love. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my mother dictate the wedding after she insulted my fiance's family and tried to control everything. I don't want to escalate the situation further, but I also can't stand the idea of having her interfere in the most important day of my life. AITA for refusing to help my brother with his wedding after what he did to me. So, this is a long story, but I'll try to keep it as clear as possible. I, 29F, have a younger brother, Jason, 26M, and we've had a complicated relationship for years. Growing up, our parents were very involved in our lives, but they were also extremely inconsistent in how they treated us. I was the responsible one, and Jason was often coddled. As kids, it led to a lot of resentment on both sides, but we managed to stay close-ish as adults, though I always felt like I had to pick up his slack in certain situations. A few months ago, Jason got engaged to Lily, 25F. From the start, he was ecstatic and immediately started asking me to help with wedding planning. At first, I was happy for him and agreed to help in some ways, giving advice, looking at venues online, and helping with some logistics. I never expected him to act like I owed him my time and energy, but that's exactly what happened. The first major issue arose with the guest list. Jason wanted to invite nearly 250 people, which seemed excessive to me, and he asked me to help him figure out how to politely tell distant relatives they weren't invited. I tried to explain that this was their responsibility as the couple getting married, and that I could only offer suggestions, but he insisted I do the bulk of it. I ended up spending days crafting emails and text messages for him, and when I was done, he complained that the tone wasn't funny enough and that I wasn't being creative. At that point, I realized he wasn't asking for help. He was expecting me to do everything. Things escalated with the wedding registry. Lily wanted a large, expensive registry, and Jason immediately asked me to research gifts and create spreadsheets for them to track who was buying what. I spent an entire weekend organizing everything, including cross-checking addresses and keeping a running tally of costs, all while still working my full-time job. I finally confronted him, saying that I felt like I was being used as unpaid wedding planner, and his response was, "Well, you're my sister. Of course I can count on you." I was frustrated, but tried to let it slide. Then came the issue with the bridal party. Jason had originally asked me to be a bridesmaid, which was fine, but he also asked me to organize all of the bridal party's outfits, coordinate fittings, and schedule hair and makeup appointments. I explained that I didn't want to take on all of that and that I was willing to attend and support, but he insisted, saying that it's tradition for the sister to help with all this stuff. I eventually said yes under duress, thinking that it might smooth things over, but I made it clear that I couldn't handle everything by myself. The breaking point happened last week. Jason called me crying because he had lost his mind over the seating chart. He claimed I had ruined everything because I suggested moving a few people to different tables so his parents wouldn't end up next to their annoying cousins. He shouted at me on the phone, saying that I was always criticizing and never supportive. I tried to explain that my intention was to help, not control, but he wouldn't listen. The conversation ended with him saying, "If you don't want to help, fine, but don't bother coming to the wedding." I was shocked. I hadn't refused to help in general, but I had started setting boundaries because I was mentally and emotionally drained from planning every tiny detail. After that call, I decided to step back entirely. I told him that I couldn't continue helping and that he would need to handle the remaining planning himself. I offered to attend the wedding as a guest and help in small ways on the day of, but I refused to take on any major responsibilities. My parents were furious, saying that I was being selfish and ruining family unity. Lily also reached out to me, saying that Jason felt betrayed and that I was being cold and ungrateful. They claimed that family should always prioritize the bride and groom over personal comfort. I get that weddings are stressful, but what I can't get over is how he treated me. I spent weeks planning and organizing, often skipping sleep and missing out on my own social life, only to be yelled at and accused of not caring. I offered advice and did work, but he treated it like a burden instead of appreciation. Now, everyone is calling me the villain for refusing to continue helping, and I can't tell if I'm overreacting or if they're all missing the point. So, Reddit, AITA, for refusing to help my brother with his wedding after the way he treated me during the planning process. Character count, 6,489 if you want. I can make a slightly longer version hitting closer to 7,000 characters with extra drama, sibling backstory, and wedding chaos details to fully emulate the highly popular AITA style. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly humiliated me over something I didn't do. 28F. Have always been close to my older sister, Emily, 32F. At least I thought so. Growing up, we shared everything. And even though she could be a bit controlling, I never really minded because I admired her and she was my only sibling. But things have changed drastically over the past year, and now I'm questioning everything about our relationship. Emily got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 34M. When she told me, I was genuinely happy for her, and I immediately offered to help with wedding planning. I assumed, naively, that as her sister, I would be involved in all the fun stuff, dress shopping, venue visits, tasting sessions, and so on. At first, she seemed excited about my help, but then things started getting weird. The first red flag was during dress shopping. Emily and I went to 3 bridal stores together. I was super supportive, giving her honest feedback when she asked. I thought we were bonding, but at the last store, she had a minor meltdown because I suggested a dress that wasn't as extra as she wanted. She stormed out, saying she didn't want me in the room because my opinions were toxic and unsupportive. I was shocked but tried to let it go, assuming it was just wedding stress. I even apologized for hurting her feelings, even though I had no idea how my input was harmful. Things escalated after the bachelor/bachelorette parties. Emily had initially asked me to help plan hers, but then she suddenly told me not to worry about it. I was disappointed, but I didn't push it. The real problem started a few weeks later. Emily's fiancé, Mark, has a younger brother, Ryan, 26M. Ryan and I have always had a playful, teasing relationship. We constantly joke around, and I thought Emily knew and appreciated our dynamic. Apparently, she didn't. At her bridal shower, Ryan and I were standing near the dessert table, and I jokingly said, "Better not eat all the cupcakes, or you're stealing the spotlight from the bride." Emily overheard, turned beet red, and accused me of mocking her in front of everyone. I was stunned. I literally had no intention of embarrassing her, and she refused to hear my side of the story. Everyone at the shower was awkward, and I ended up leaving early because I was so embarrassed. After that incident, things became toxic. Emily started texting me passive-aggressive messages almost daily, accusing me of trying to ruin her wedding and always finding ways to insert myself into drama. I tried to calmly explain that I wasn't doing any of those things, but she would either ignore me or respond with guilt-tripping messages. My attempts to communicate just seemed to make her angrier. I realized that she had built this narrative in her mind that I was some kind of saboteur and no amount of reasoning was going to fix it. The breaking point came last weekend. Emily hosted a rehearsal dinner, and I was invited. I was excited to go because I genuinely wanted to support her, but I wanted to keep a low profile. During the dinner, someone accidentally spilled a drink on Emily's new dress. She immediately turned to me and accused me of knocking it over on purpose. I tried to explain that I had been across the room, nowhere near the spill, but she wouldn't listen. She started yelling in front of everyone, calling me selfish and destructive, and then she stormed out. The room was silent, everyone looking uncomfortable, and I felt completely humiliated. Mar tried to calm her down, but she refused and left. Her friends and family were awkwardly sympathetic, but didn't know what to say. I left soon after because I felt like staying would just make things worse. After that night, Emily called me nonstop. She left voicemails saying I was toxic to the family and that I had ruined everything she worked so hard for. I didn't respond for 2 days, and then I sent a message calmly stating that I would not be attending her wedding if she continued treating me like this. She exploded over text, accusing me of being immature and jealous, and demanding to know why I would punish her on her special day. I told her again that I simply couldn't be in an environment where I was being publicly humiliated and blamed for things I didn't do. Now my parents are furious with me. They're saying I'm overreacting and that I should just suck it up for Emily's sake. My friends are split. Some think Emily is overreacting and that I have every right to protect myself from being bullied, while others think I'm being dramatic and that family events require compromise, even if it's uncomfortable. I feel like I've tried everything to salvage the relationship and be supportive, but Emily seems determined to paint me as the villain. I'm genuinely heartbroken because I wanted her wedding to be a happy time for both of us. I still love my sister, but I can't keep letting myself be publicly shamed for things I didn't do. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly humiliated me over incidents I didn't cause. The situation has escalated so much that even extended family is picking sides, and I feel trapped between wanting to protect myself and wanting to maintain family harmony, which seems impossible right now. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.